As a clarinet and a saxophone player in college, I was given an opportunity to start playing bass clarinet in an ensemble, and I've loved it ever since. And maybe some of you have been given the opportunity to switch from clarinet in your band over to bass clarinet. Maybe your band director told you that you're going to do it, or maybe you just heard the instrument and fell in love with the sound right away and asked if you could switch over. Maybe you're a saxophone player and you've just really heard that sound and said, that's a really different quality than the saxophone and I really like it. Let me give it a try. Regardless, it's an instrument that many of us switch between, and it has its own unique characteristics that we have to figure out how to accommodate when we have one of the other single reed instruments that is our primary instrument. So hopefully I can give you some pointers today on helping you make that transition and be comfortable playing the bass clarinet. You know, the first thing that comes up when we're playing this is the whole issue of about how we're going to use our air. And it looks formidable because, you know, and this is a low C bass clarinet, so it's quite a bit longer than the standard low E flat clarinet. And it looks like it's going to just take a tremendous amount of air, but it really isn't that much different to manage this than it would be a clarinet or a saxophone. Some of the things that we have to keep in mind are that we have to breathe deeply enough in order to manage this consistent airflow to create a feeling of cooperative resistance. I'm trying to engage my muscles in such a way that I am going to control and slow down the return of the diaphragm muscle to its natural resting position. So let's think about how that works. The diaphragm muscle, let's just say, for a simple way to describe it, it's like a little trampoline that's connected to your rib cage in the front and the back. And when you take a breath, that little trampoline, that diaphragm muscle, will descend. It will stretch downward as your lungs fill with air. And in fact, it makes the lungs fill with air. And then when you exhale, it will naturally push back up again, expelling the air from your lungs. As a wind player, what you can do is try to engage the muscles in your abdomen and waist so that you can control that diaphragm muscle just a little bit more. The way that I do that is what I call using my shh muscles. So if you take a big breath right now and do your loudest shush that you're trying to tell somebody clear across the library that they need to keep it down, that shows your muscles what to do. So let's do that together. Now, notice what happened to your muscles when you did that. You should have felt that you took your breath and your stomach and waist expanded that way. And then when you tried to shh, there was an outward and downward pressure in those muscles. If you need to check one more time, do that again. And then we can try to do that on our instrument. I'm going to take a big breath and I'm going to engage those muscles and just play a scale. So, I'm not using a ton of air, I'm just engaging these muscles in such a way that I am creating this cooperative resistance with the reed of the instrument. It's not even as fast of an airflow as it would be on a soprano clarinet. It's really probably closer to playing a saxophone as far as the necessary airspeed that you need. And something to consider, it's also not the full length of the instrument that makes the difference. It's really the space between the reed and the mouthpiece. If you had the proper measuring tools of a mouthpiece craftsperson, you could measure the opening between the reed and the mouthpiece. And you would find that a soprano clarinet has a particular range of of space between the reed and the mouthpiece. That is typical. And as the instrument gets bigger, the mouthpiece gets bigger, the reed gets bigger, and also that distance between the reed and the mouthpiece is also larger. And that's really what you're experiencing when you play a larger instrument. So it's not that you're trying to fill the body of this instrument up with air. You're not. You're just you're manipulating the reed and the mouthpiece in a little different way. Now, other things that we have to figure out with this instrument is just physically, how am I going to manage this? And obviously your physical size can make a difference with this. The chairs that you have access to, because I play on a low C bass clarinet, I can't always count on the fact that I am going to go to a different location for a rehearsal and that there is going to be a chair that will be comfortable for me to sit in. And in fact, in my office here right now, I'm sitting on a little piano bench because the chairs I have in my office are not quite tall enough. Because to me what's so important is that I want my body to be upright. I think that whenever we play any musical instrument, we need to use our bodies in a very healthy way. And your band directors are probably always telling you to sit up straight and sit out at the edge of your chair so that you can breathe better. But it's also just about the overall health of your body and how you can also physically manipulate the instrument that you're playing. So for me, I'm trying to sit up straight, and I want to just bring that instrument or the mouthpiece of the bass clarinet right to my mouth. I don't want to be leaning upward, and I often see students in junior high and high school band rooms who might be doing that, where they have a big instrument and they're doing this to play, or they might be leaning down. So you can experiment and try to figure out what you need to do. Of course, it can be the peg on the bass clarinet. You can raise it or lower it. You can also try to find a different chair to sit in. And in fact, you might even find, if you need it, find a large phone book. There are phone books still out there in the world, not as many, but see if you can find some kind of a book to sit on if you need to get taller for the instrument. And you might find that that makes a big difference. Now, the other part about it would be the angle of the instrument. What we have going on with bass clarinet is there is not a standard design of the neck. Necks can be different. So, on the screen here, you can see a picture of two different bass clarinet necks next to each other, and I've tried to line them up in such a way so that you can really see the difference of the curve and the angle that the mouthpiece is going to be coming up to the mouth. The top neck is the one that came with my bass clarinet when I bought it back in approximately 1990. And the lower one is a neck that I bought about 5 years ago, and it's the current design for the make of the instrument that I play on, which is the Buffet Prestige. They've changed their neck design a little bit, and as you can see, the newer neck design comes up at a steeper angle, putting the angle of the mouthpiece a little closer to what a traditional clarinet angle might be if I was playing on my soprano clarinet. In the second picture, that's the top neck is a really old LeBlanc instrument, and you can notice a difference there. It's a different angle than my current neck, but also it's a single piece. The other two necks in the pictures, you're able to adjust the intonation on the neck, whether it's a little sliding mechanism that has cork to keep it from slipping, or in the first neck there was a little screw where you could slide something out and then tighten it down with a tension screw. So there really is a lot of different neck variation for bass clarinets. What you can do to try to figure out what the most comfortable angle would be with your instrument, you can experiment by changing the angle of the instrument by how you put it under your chair. Right now, I have the instrument straight up and down because that is the most comfortable thing for me with my current neck. On the first neck that I used with the instrument, I often tucked the instrument quite a bit under my chair. And the way that I would be able to balance the instrument then would be with the use of a neck strap. So I'll get the LeBlanc instrument and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm back with the LeBlanc, and here, let's hold these up where you can kind of see the angle. The angle on my current neck is definitely pointing the mouthpiece up a little higher into my mouth. I'm going to play this instrument right now, this LeBlanc, straight up and down like I do my own instrument. And it definitely is a little less comfortable for me. I find myself wanting to tip my head to try to find that angle. So now I'm just going to angle it under my chair so the peg is pointing at an angle under the piano bench. And I'm going to put on a neck strap because when I play, if I'm playing the open notes, throat notes on the instrument, I'm going to feel like I'm going to drop the instrument. So I need that neck strap for stability. And it's mostly just to keep it from falling. I feel like, I'm not sure how much it comes through on the video here, but I feel like the tone is actually a little more consistent. Your angle of instrument can also determine some of the embouchure characteristics that you are going to use while you're playing bass clarinet. So let me go back to my own instrument here and we'll talk about that. When I play bass, for the most part, I'm doing all of the same things that I would be doing with my soprano clarinet. And some of those consistent things are going to be the way that we just open our mouth a little bit, we cover the cutting edge of our teeth with our bottom lip, we point our top lip in towards our top teeth a little bit. We want our corners or the sides of our embouchure really engaged, really grabbing in towards the sides of the mouthpiece. And of course, with clarinet, we're pointing our chin downward. I have all of those same characteristics when I play bass clarinet. The only difference to me really feels like the space, the amount of reed and mouthpiece that I have in my mouth. So of course, things are a little bit more open. And you do have to make sure that you have enough reed and mouthpiece in your mouth when you're switching onto a larger instrument. It often takes a while to really figure that out. And something you can do, you can get something like a business card. If you, I don't know how many people still use business cards. I have some, they're in my desk drawer. But something like a business card or an index card, if you slip that in between the reed and the mouthpiece until it kind of stops, don't force it or anything, you're going to see the point on the reed approximately where the reed and the mouthpiece are meeting, and then they separate. And you should really be putting the pressure on the reed right at about that line. So it might be worth doing where you slip a card in there, draw a little pencil line, and see if you can figure out how much that really is in your mouth. And it is worth some experimentation to make sure you have that much. Now, if you're a clarinet player or if you're a saxophone player, then you will still use your embouchure muscles the same way. Things just might be opened up a little bit more, so it will feel a little bit different. Now, if you're a saxophone player who's playing some bass clarinet, or the angle of the neck of your instrument is quite a bit more straight in, more similar to a saxophone angle, you're probably going to need a little softer bottom lip. When I'm playing and teaching saxophone, I like to think about that as how my bottom lip is a little more in front of my teeth than over my teeth. Now, that's not to say that for clarinet I want to pull all of my lip over my teeth. I don't want that. But I feel like there's just a little bit less lip over my teeth with a saxophone. And I really engage lots of forward qualities, quite a bit more forward qualities than I do with a clarinet. So with that saxophone softer bottom lip idea, it's similar to saying fu, which is spelled F-U-H. And there's a lot of forward quality to it. If you say it slowly, fu, you could feel that your bottom lip is kind of sticking out a little bit. You still have to find a way to cover the cutting edge of your teeth, but you can have a little bit softer and more forward qualities right there. Now, I think that one of the toughest things about playing the bass clarinet is learning how to play in the upper register of the instrument. It doesn't really feel like a clarinet, and that can be a challenge for a lot of people. One of the most biggest determining factors of how it feels in the upper register is based on the quality of the instrument. So you do get what you pay for. And what I mean by that is professional level instruments tend to have 2 register openings on the instrument. Student or intermediate bass clarinets tend to have 1 register opening. So let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, now we've got a close-up of the upper register mechanism on the bass clarinet. Now, if you look, right here is 1 register opening. The other register opening is up here on the neck of the instrument, right here. And what happens here right now, I'm going to finger a low G on the instrument and open the register key. So you see, I'm going to go back and forth. And if you look at that first one right here, you can see that opens and closes when I open the register key. Now, when I go from D in the upper register and lift my finger to go to E, the one on the body closes and the register opening on the neck opens. So it shifts. It basically is using this register vent to play the first, let's see, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and then when I switch to E, it's using it for the long notes, long fingered notes in the upper register, and then it switches over to the opening on the neck. So that gives it a little different response. Here is the LeBlanc instrument, and it has just a single register opening right here on the body of the instrument. So if I do the same thing, if I finger low G on the instrument and add the register key, that's going to open, and then that's it, all the way up. There's no change to any opening on the neck. So the resistance level is a little greater in the upper register with this kind of a single register opening. Okay, now that we've looked at the difference between how the register openings work, I'm going to show you a couple little exercises you can try to do to help yourself become more comfortable with the upper register of the bass clarinet. The first thing you need to know is that the upper register of the bass doesn't play exactly like the upper register of a soprano clarinet. You have to train yourself as a bass clarinet player to feel like you're playing in the low register. You just happen to open the register key. It really can be that simple. So the best way to do it is you just play ascending 12ths. So, I don't know, how about I'll start on low B flat. I'm just going to play a B flat for 2 counts. I'm going to crescendo just slightly and then relax into the register change. I'm going to try really hard not to do anything except this. I'm trying not to anticipate upper register. I'm trying to stay totally steady right here in my embouchure. I'm trying to engage my muscles in just the same way and just relax upward. The biggest thing we can do wrong is to try to force the upper register to come out. And for many of us on soprano clarinet, when we're learning to play in the upper register, we tend to work a lot harder and we blow a lot faster air and try to really intensify things on the way up, and that's really not the way to approach it on bass. Let me do the next one down. I'm going to play low A, add the register key. Just working my way down the horn, couple counts on the low note, add the register key to play up a 12th. Now, after you try some of those, maybe you want to get to the left-hand notes. You'll be feeling a different kind of resistance. Try not to engage with that resistance. Just let it be there, become familiar with it. It's just a new person you're making friends with, that's all. Let's go to low C and play up. Okay, so after you experiment with that for a little while and start finding that your upper 12th is starting to come out and you're starting to become familiar with it, and it's feeling more consistent, that it's working more often than not, then what you want to do is start trying to play it by itself. I would recommend play the 12th, stop, restart on that upper note. I'll go back down to low B flat. So I just took a little breath, restarted. I would do that with all of the same notes that I had been practicing. A further step after you do that, can you play the upper note without playing the lower version, the lower fundamental note, ahead of time? So just start in the upper register. That was a little squirrely. Let me try that again. So I'm training my body what it feels like to play those upper notes. Next thing you might want to do would be play the ascending 12th and then come down the scale. If I play from low C and go up my 12th to G, I want to stay in the fundamental note scale. So I'm starting on low C, go up to G, I'm coming down with the C major notes, so no sharps or flats. After you do that, turn around and come back up. I might just play one octave. I'll practice pre-fingering on the throat notes for the way up. And at that point, you're starting to try to figure out what it feels like to play through that register change. And there's a big difference of resistance between A and B in that scale. So step by step, you need to try to make friends with that upper register. If you've played bass clarinet for any length of time now, you have found that it is very prone to squeaking. Bass clarinet makes amazing squeaks. I think that every professional musician who plays bass clarinet has a good squeak story of probably in live performance. Some of the things that cause the squeaks on the bass clarinet, the mechanism itself is very fragile. all of these long rods, especially down here in the low part of the horn, everything is so bendable. So you have to be really careful with that instrument. And if something is leaking just a little bit on the bass clarinet, it can really cause a problem. And sometimes squeaks will be one of the ways that you know something is wrong with your instrument. If you're playing in the upper register and you're squeaking or something's not working, it could be the alignment of the instrument. So when you put the horn together, if your instrument has two pieces, you have to be really certain about the bridge key alignment. And even when the bridge key or keys, sometimes there are two here, even when they appear to be lined up correctly, the upper register still may have problems. So be willing to get it lined up, play, and if it doesn't feel quite right, make little tiny adjustments to how those bridge keys are lined up, and you might find that all of a sudden your upper register feels better. That happens to me with this instrument, so that's something I always make it a habit to check when I put the horn together. I don't assume that it just looking right is going to be correct. The other thing that happens is the reed. A lot of times on the bass clarinet and larger single reed instruments, we tend to find that softer strength reeds, the lower numbers, allow us to really feel lots of freedom, and we feel like we can make a really big, easy sound. And low notes respond really well, but they won't work very well for the upper register on the bass clarinet. So you have to make sure that you are playing on a reed that is strong enough to be able to play in the upper register. And that doesn't mean that you need a 4 or a 5. There is going to be some match between the reed strength and the mouthpiece you are playing on, but it may take some experimentation. If you get really squeaky, you may need to try a half strength stronger. And lastly, your embouchure can make the bass clarinet squeak quite a lot. Every time that you start a note, you need to make sure that the embouchure is fully engaged with the mouthpiece. That means that it cannot continue to activate the muscles as you begin to blow. If you do that, air hits the reed at the same time that your embouchure muscles are putting pressure in perhaps different ways on the reed, and those things cause turbulence and make the squeak happen. So you should experiment breath starting notes on the bass clarinet to work on embouchure stability. You could do that with low register notes, and what I do for that is I try to get my embouchure really set. I try to take a little breath through the corners of my mouth, and I make sure that the embouchure muscles are fully set right before I play. It's something I'm thinking about. Because I'm not playing music, I'm able to focus on just that little detail. Breathe, set, blow. So I want to make sure totally set before I begin the airflow. And hopefully that can help you get away from any squeakiness that you might have on the bass clarinet.